Hey guys, my name is Jason Woodard. I will be your tutor, I guess, your course leader for business growth through podcasting for the Growth University. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for downloading this course. Um, Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I'm based in Ireland, in the south of Ireland. Just a small thing about me. I've done podcasts, so I produce myself. I think over 7 podcasts of right now. I have 2 podcasts myself. One is in hiatus. The other is still fully active. It's called Content is King. It's a marketing podcast. And Jen and Craig reached out to me. I was on Craig's podcast, and he reached out to me, and they both reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like to build a course for us?" I said, "Absolutely. I'd love to be able to share my knowledge with you guys." So here I am. Here we go. This week we're going to start easy. It's not too hard. As you can see on the screen there, I have 2 cameras going, so I'm always looking back and forth. So don't worry about me making eye contact with you. Just it's all about the content I'm showing on screen. Lesson 1 is about to kick off. So lesson 1 we're going to be featuring. It's going to be you should start a podcast, and here's why. Discovering your niche. Understand the different formats of podcasts. There's so many. And then you got to find out what's right for you. What works for you? What style is yours? As I said, I have a proven track record. That's my show there. Content is King, this guy here. I produce several other podcasts. I've been guest on several podcasts. I've co-hosted podcasts. So I have a background in radio. So again, I'm a techie at heart. I'm a big techie at heart. I love when a technical problem happens and my friends come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Because I'm in. And a lot of the time, I'm just better at Googling than them. It's not that I'm a whiz kid like that, but I love tech. And then when podcasts happened, blew up, whatever, we're talking about what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I think. I thought I need to get on this train, and I did. I was lucky when I did work in the radio station that they let me use the studio, the full. It was $100,000 or €100,000 studio at the time, and I was lucky to jump in and use it. So yeah, so there's some shows I've produced. Content is King is my podcast. How many podcasts are there in the world? So as of 2021, there are over 2 million podcasts and more than 48 million podcast episodes. Like, that's a lot of podcasts. And these people aren't just wasting their time doing it for no reason. There's a reason these people are doing this. This is pretty startling growth, considering we're just over 500,000 active podcasts in 2018. 2018, there was only 500,000 active podcasts. Now we're at 48 million. Lads above. Why should you start a podcast? Why did I start a podcast? As I said, I love talking. I love technology. I love marketing. I kind of fell into marketing, and I thought, hey, I want to talk more about this. I want people to learn from me. I want to be able to help businesses. I want to help people with marketing. So that's why I picked up it, and that's my niche in my podcast is marketing. That's my niche, digital marketing at that. Statistics show that 54% of podcast listeners are much more likely to consider buying from a brand after hearing its advertisement on a podcast. That's a huge number, guys. 54%. It just, I'll go into this more. I'll delve into this more. But when you're in someone's ears, when they have the headphones on and they're listening to you on their commute or wherever they're going, or they're at home and they're relaxing, they're listening, you have their undivided attention. And that's why later on I'll talk about sponsorship and which ads go best where because of that intimacy. But you have their ear, which is, to me, is fascinating, because not that they can be persuaded. That sounds kind of shady, but they can be, hey, try this brand, guys. And it just as 54% tend to listen and tend to go buy. The majority of podcast listeners, 43%, discover new shows by asking around on social media, online communities, and recommendations from a friend. This is followed by consulting people they know that have the same interests, browsing through their podcast. Now, I've never actually taken someone's phone and went through their podcast app. I've always either put it on social media where I've asked for recommendations, or I've put it into groups I know of my friends saying, hey, what do you listen to? What podcasts are good? And then I kind of worked my way from that. And then I'll always tip into from what I know, I don't think Spotify has a chart as good as Apple's at the moment. So I'll pop into Apple's charts and see what's up, what's down, and all this kind of stuff, and see what's good. Um, if these podcast statistics still aren't convincing enough, how's this? That podcast listeners are more likely to follow brands on their social media sites also. So not only are you gaining a listener on your podcast, you're actually gaining a follower, or like a follower for your brand, for your social media, for your group, for your community. It's huge, huge. Now, what is your niche? What do you find interesting? What are you into? Super important, because there's no point talking about something that you kind of vain interest. Oh, I like darts. Oh, I like NFL. Oh, I like boxing. I like woodwork. You need to this needs to be somewhat of a passion for you. You need to love what you're talking about, because again, as I said, that intimacy will show the listener that you're intimate about, you care about this subject you're talking about. If you're just a guy or a girl talking about, oh yeah, I do it in the weekends and I enjoy it, it's not gonna work well with them. So because they gave you their attention, they want you to be all in on something. They want to hear the best of the best. And if you're like, yeah, it's fine, I'm enjoying it, they'll tune out straight away. So Apple's podcast, the top 200 podcasts by primary genre. Comedy is huge, obviously. So you have a lot of comedy podcasts. And being Irish, there's a lot of, you can tell, like you can imagine how many comedy podcasts there are in Ireland, because us Irish tend to be funny, you know. News and politics, obviously very up to date kind of politics discussions, news, all breaking news, all kind of stuff. Society, culture, personal journeys, history, science and medicine, management and marketing, sports and recreation, on and on, business, film, TV, investing, all this kind of stuff. Self help is down there with kids and family as well. So it's all about understanding what is your niche, understanding what do you want to talk. Like if I told you to sit in a studio for an hour to talk about an item or a subject, and you came back to me and said, "Oh, what would that subject be? Do you think? Do you think it's golf? Do you think it's baking? Do you think it's, as I said, sailing, woodwork? Like what is that about? Is it news? Is it politics? Is it? You need to sit down and go, right. I personally would write down three things. What I'm in. What am I massively into? What do I enjoy watching? It could be anything. It could be Love Island. It could be a reality TV show. It could be the Real Housewives or something. Whatever it is, you need to write down three things on a piece of paper, and then your gut will tell you what you do and what you don't like. So, like, you'll ring one off. No, I'm not going to do that one. And then you'll have a fight between the top two, and then you'll decide on one, and then you'll probably change your mind and go back to the other one. But that to me shows you've kind of thought about it, and that you've worked through what you want to do, what you want to speak about. Discovering your niche again. So pick the subject you want to talk about. Play to your strengths. Understand what you're talking about, because if you don't understand what you're talking about, the listener certainly won't understand what you're talking about. They won't have a clue what you're talking about. Make it niche. As I said, if it's the Real Housewives of Brooklyn, that podcast is about the Real Housewives of Brooklyn. Now, if you're a business, this is your business niche is perfect. Again, you know, if you're growing your business through this podcast, it's going to be your niche. What is your niche? Are you a woodworker? Are you a plumber? Are you an electrician? Like, are you an investor? Are you a marketeer? Whatever your niche is, you need to know exactly what you're talking about. These are a list of 15 untapped podcast ideas. Now, if this is relevant to your business, fantastic. You can see it there: the outdoors, sailing, welding, material woodwork, animals, DIY, musical instruments, house flipping, podcasting, wedding and event planning, 3D printing, like storm chasing. Here in Ireland, there's not much storm chasing. There's always storms, but there's never storm chasing. It's never that bad. Stateside might be different though. Caving, rock climbing, rappelling. That could be a company that, you know, does that kind of those tours. Tiny homes, urban farming, book summaries and reviews. So, guys, if your business isn't there, that's okay too. Like an agency, a investment, accounting, a solicitor, or a lawyer, as you would say in the States, there's so much to be able to delve in on a podcast, be it, let's say you are a lawyer or a solicitor, that you have different guests each week, 15, 20-minute episodes, little bite-sized stuff for people's journeys to and from work. If you're buying a house, here are the steps you need to take. You have a specialist, you have an engineer with you, and you have a bank manager of some sort who will discuss the idea of a mortgage, and then you'll have the engineer who'll go through what you need. These kind of stuff, just plan it out properly, and don't ever be afraid to have seasons. I see people going, oh no, like Joe Rogan has 1,700 episodes. That's great for Joe Rogan, but for businesses, it's always nice to have a little package to be able to offer people. So, like for your business, if you can have 1 to 3 episodes per season, if you want, 6 episodes, if you can do 6 episodes, fantastic. If you can't, that's okay too. 3 episodes is plenty, and then you can take snippets of that, and we'll go into all the marketing beyond in I think it's lesson 2 or 3. We'll go into all that, but you can then promote the season 2's coming back, and it's more content for your business and your brand, and you're building through that, you know. Okay, so understanding your podcast format and choosing what podcast format you want. Now, this is very important because this can, I don't want to say make or break your podcast, but it can definitely make it a lot better if you pick the right format, because excuse me, monologues are extremely tough. Like I'm monologuing right now to a camera, to the microphone, and it's not easy. It's taken me years to be able to get up to this stage where I'm comfortable enough, comfortable enough to be able to just chat with you guys and walk you through this process. Would I do it professionally on my own podcast? Maybe not. I love the back and forth. I love banter. I love having fun. So that's where I have so for my podcast, Content is King, I have a co-host called Muriel, and we back and forth in this in this studio here in Republic of Work in Cork City in Ireland. I think it's better for a listener personally. Again, it's just my personal opinion on that. Because that's what I like to hear. Saying that, I love the Chris D'Elia podcast where it's just him. He's a comedian. He just talks to the camera and microphone, and it's hilarious, and I find that hilarious. But monologuing is a great option for solo podcasters. It's a very effective way to share expertise. So, as I was saying about the solicitor, or if you're an accountant or a fashion designer, if you want to sit and talk about the next big thing happening in your business, the next big project, or you are a solicitor or you are an accountant and you want to talk about how to do your VAT returns, this could work for you. It could be a 20-minute episode, 15-minute episodes, 6 episodes, how to file your VAT returns, how to file your tax returns, like this kind of stuff. That's a 6-episode series. That's 15 minutes. Like that's a series of podcasts for your business. That's content you can put out, and you can refer for people. Hey guys, if you're stuck with your tax returns, please listen to our podcast. We will walk you through step by step. Any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact our office. You know, it's just a nice selling point. It's different. It's nice content. It's good for your brand. It's good for your business. As I said, the multi-host is conversational. It's informational, featuring more than one host. I always think 2 is good. I think 3 is good if you guys are experienced and know when to stop talking and let the other person speak. Because a lot of people don't know when to do that, and it's tough for the listener to keep their ears following the conversation. Excuse me. Again, an interview style would be somewhat like the co-host scenario, but it's more interview as you sit down, list of questions, a guided conversation with the guest to allow variant of opinions. Excuse me. But again, that could work for you if, let's say, you're a business mentor and you want to sit down with 5 businesses you've worked with or 6 businesses you've worked with. You want to question them on their business, start to now, see how they're growing, how you could even do a live session on how you can help them. That could work. Or there could be a scenario of it's kind of a post-mortem after working with them, and they break down how you helped them, or this kind of thing, you know. Or this could be an interview. Could also be with the designer of your house. If you're a graphic designer, sorry, excuse me, an interior designer, and you have one of your clients in who they own, I don't know, a little restaurant, or they own a house, a beautiful house you've done up, and this is a conversation back and forth, but it's an interview of, and you're just kind of promoting your work through that, and you're building your brand through that, and yeah, that's a nice piece because some people just, I always find sometimes people go too far back. They go back to the very, very beginning in an interview, and by the time the 15, 20 minute mark hits, they haven't got to know the real person of what they're doing now. A lot of people, they care about your backstory, and they care about what you're doing, but they want to kind of hear what you're doing now. Yes, you grew up wherever you grew up. Yes, you had a hard childhood, or you had a great childhood, or yes, include it, but limit it, because people, it can get weary if, unless that's the interview that you're discussing with someone. It's about their history. If you're leading them to today and what you're doing and what their business is doing, lead them somewhat fast enough. Don't let them linger too much in the past. People want the present and people want the future. A lot of the time. A roundtable conversation is a group conversation with more than one guest, usually long form style. Now, the roundtable, as I said earlier, it's a great format when done correctly. There's a great actors roundtable. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think Variety do it on YouTube. I've watched it on YouTube, where they take all the Oscar nominated people, let's say best males or best actors, excuse me, not best male, best actor, best director, this kind of thing. And they have them in a round table conversation where they're having coffee and tea and they're just sitting down talking. But the interviewer is fantastic. He really controls the conversation. I think if you do have a round table, you need to control that table. You need to have a host, or be the host that controls that table. So if you're sitting there and you have 5 businesses with you or 4 businesses with you, you need to understand the pace. You need to feel the pace. You need to understand what question will lead best into what conversation. Like it's very tricky, but once you nail it, it really shows you've nailed it, and it really comes off well. So I would say, if you do look at the round table scenario, have a strong host, have a very strong conversational host who can take a conversation and just control the conversation in a natural but assertive way, if that makes sense. Narrative. There's a great one called Business Wars. If you ever listen to the podcast, Wondery do it. This really, really, it takes the narrative style of podcasting, and it's so good. What it does, a pure example, Netflix versus Blockbuster, Pizza Hut versus Domino's. But what it does is, he actually he does characters, and he does the voices, and he goes back and he finds the stories out, and he brings you through. It's like listening to a story as a child, and that's why I love it. Like, I turn it on in the car when I'm coming to work. It's half an hour long episodes, but he really gets the characters along. He gets the characters across brilliantly, and he started bringing other actors in now. And it's, if you've never listened to Business Wars, I highly recommend it. And then you have a documentary style, so similar to narrative, but it's behind the scenes element, and it's very heavy production. And I would think the best example of this would be The Pitch by Gimlet, where it's kind of like Shark's Tank or Dragon's Den, where 4 or 5 investors sit inside a room and there's a microphone and someone comes in and pitches the business looking for investment. Or the documentary style would also you'd have these murder mystery podcasts and this kind of stuff, where they people interview, like West Cork podcast is a big one in Europe, and in Ireland and England as well. About the murder of Sophie de Pontier. The West Cork podcast is, so it would, so like, take a Netflix documentary, let's say Make You a Murderer, or what was that one with the crazy cat fella? It'll come to me. Tiger King, I think it might have been. But put it in podcast form. You're listening to it. And there actually is a podcast actually about that, I think. But if documentary and narrative could really work for your business in the scenario of, let's take Jameson, for example. Jameson whiskey is a very famous whiskey. You probably know it wherever you're sitting right now, whatever part of the world you're listening. But Jameson did a 3-part podcast series, I think maybe 30-minute episodes, nothing too crazy, on the history of Jameson. So and Guinness did it as well, actually. You can go to the storehouse in Guinness in Dublin and listen through podcasts while you're walking around their massive museum and warehouse and learn the story. And it's just something that businesses don't think they could do. Let's say you're a carpet business that's been in business for 35 years, 40 years, and it's generation to generation, and you're wondering, how am I taking the business forward? If you were to have a 30-minute or 40-minute episode about your parents or whoever had the business before you and what they did and how they kept it alive and how they kept it moving, and then episode 2 is them passing the torch and how you're keeping the business alive and what you plan on doing and who's with you now and where the business has gone. And then episode 3 is the future of the business, where we hope to go, what we plan to do. Here's what we're going to do in the future. Guys, it's a 3-episode podcast series for your business. That Joe Soap, me, I'm looking for a new carpet. Oh, I go to this website. Oh, who are these people? I then see a podcast series. I start listening. And if it's engaging enough and if it's good, you'll earn my trust because I'll know you. I'll know your brand. I'll know your product from listening to this podcast. And I'll be like, oh, wow, I'm buying. Because like you're in. Because then once you know their backstory, once you know the history, the rich story behind it, the rich history behind the brand and the product, it's hard. It's quite hard for someone to deny that and to say, no, I'm going to go somewhere else. If they've given the time to listen to your brand story and the and a podcast about your brand, I would say it's quite hard for them to move away from purchasing from you. You know. So once you found your niche, or once you found once you found your niche, and once you found your format of what you want to do, you need to find your style. What's my why? Right here. What's my why? Why do I want to accomplish? What do I want to accomplish with my podcast? What do you want to accomplish with the podcast? Is it to grow your business? Is it to secure more money? Is it to secure a bigger following on social media? Is it to grow your brand? What do you want to do with this podcast, and why do you want to do it? Is this a way to get into places or into markets that you couldn't before? You know, you're bringing in, let's say you're bringing in a guest of a huge company that you want to learn more with or you want to do business with. You bring in the CEO and you say, hey, I'd love to get you on my podcast. Oh, a bit of ego kicks in, a bit of flattery. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll be on your podcast. And then podcast happens, the interviewing goes great. It goes great. Everyone's happy. And then you can drop the question. Hey, look, if you ever need help with anything, I'm here. Here's my business card. I'd love to work with you guys. You just literally got a face-to-face with the CEO of a company. You've learned about him or her. You've learned their history. You've learned about their business. You've learned where they want to go with their business. So now, as someone who wants to work with them, you completely understand their business and understand, right, I can help you guys here, here, and here. And here's how I can do it. You have direct contact with them. You'll have several contacts with them because several points of contact because it's emails, obviously. You'll be talking about the podcast, what's being released. So again, what's your why? Why do you want to do this podcast? What's my skill set? What can you speak about with confidence? Now make sure, confidence is a strange thing because once you have it, you have it. Once you don't, you don't. And there's a very gray area in the middle with confidence. But once you've learned about the subject matter you want to speak about, once you've lived that, once you know it, confidence comes easy in those scenarios because yes, you're sitting in front of a microphone and yes, it's different, but once you know in the back of your mind you can back up what you're saying, there shouldn't be a problem. There really shouldn't, because you're confident enough because you have all the information back up here or written down in front of you. It's not a big deal. You're on a podcast, guys. Yes, there's cameras. Who cares? No one cares if there's paper in front of you and you're reading a question. It's okay. People do it the whole time. I've seen podcasts where people have stuff on their phones the whole time. It's not a big deal. So just find that one subject that you're confident about and hone in on that. Who's my audience? What demographic will be interested in your topic? Now, what's an interesting thing here is a little cheat, if you want, per se, is if you do have a social media presence already and you're a business that has a presence and you've been building the whole time, I would look at that demographic. I would look at the insights, let's say on your Instagram, and see what age they are, what sex they are, male, female, all of the above. And then just hone on that. Who's listening? What age demographic? Where are they? What city are they in? Do I look for sponsorship in that city because that's where they're from? You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Who is my audience and why are they listening? And what sets me apart? What's unique? Just back to the audience. Again, you as a business will know, and a brand, you'll know your customers. So you can have a rough idea, but I say the social media thing to be able to hone in a bit more on who's actually paying attention to my brand, who's actually liking my content, who's this kind of stuff. And I always find that the best way to kind of go from it, because if you understand your audience, you can deliver the right subject matter, because then it's something they want to hear, you know? And then what sets me apart? What unique angle does your show offer? It's important to be somewhat different. You could, like, come here. There's several carbon copy podcasts out there. There's several out there. But if you can be different, just the slightest way different, a segment is different in your podcast that's different to anyone else in the podcast. A pure example would be in my podcast, in the Content is King podcast, myself and my co-host Mira, we're looking for something to do, marketing wise. And I know it's nothing different, but the style is somewhat different. So we do Room 101, which is we put stuff we don't like about marketing in the Room 101. So we each week have a Room 101 ready to go. I don't like TikTok's new update. I didn't like the way Instagram announced that thing. Facebook is really acting up their business with this kind of stuff, and goes in the room. That gives the listener something to connect with, and that gives them something, oh yeah, that really pissed me off too. I didn't like that. And then they feel somewhat connected to you. And then what we also do is a segment called the pro bono, which is a legal term for free services. So what we do is we put it out to our listeners, we put it out to the public across our social platforms, across our social medias, that we will give you a free audit for your social media on air, on podcast, on our podcast live. So we have people sending in their Instagram handles and stuff, and we literally break down their Instagram. Look, guys, it's not good enough. You should be doing more content here, this content, more text, use more text posts, more imagery where your reels, this kind of stuff. And we kind of, obviously we don't rip them apart. We do it with care, and we do it with, because people are vulnerable because they've given their businesses to us to do it live. So everything we do is we criticize and we critique out of respect for this business, because they've asked us to do it. And it's our personal, it's our professional opinion as marketeers, what they should be doing. We're there to help. It's not like, oh, you're shit, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. No. You do it out of professionalism. And that's what we do. So obviously, if it's related to your brand and your business, keep it extremely professional if you can. So guys, that's the end of this lesson. The next lesson is going to be what equipment, what software should you use, what platform should you be using to get RSS feeds, where should you put a podcast once it's finished, how to launch your podcast, and who should be on my podcast, your guests. So we're going to go into the next lesson. I thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me here. You can see it there. I'm happy to chat to anyone, guys. If you need help with anything, any questions, do reach out, please. I will have a cheat sheet attached to this course to give you all the links and everything like that I've talked about. If I refer to a link or a website, I'm going to have that there. Or podcasts like Business Wars, this kind of stuff, I'm going to refer to that in that cheat sheet, where you can click it and then you can hear it and go, oh, that's what he was discussing. That's what he meant. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. And I hope this helped. And on to the next lesson.